maintaining export capacity.
One of the reasons Azerbaijan is increasing its fossil fuel production is to meet the demands of Europe, desperate since the war in Ukraine for alternatives to Russian supplies. The same Europe pressuring the world at these talks to reduce emissions faster. The kind of contradiction that explains why progress is so slow and success so far from guaranteed. Tom Clark, Sky News, Baku.
Well, let's speak to two companies at the forefront of the energy debate. In a moment, we'll speak to Zoisha Northbond. She's the chief executive of Octopus Energy Generation. But first, let's speak to David Hobbs. He's head of Pantheon Resources, which has an agreement to sell natural gas from Alaska. I suppose my first question to you, David, is, COP29 is meeting in Azerbaijan. Do you agree with the aims of COP29 to essentially phase out fossil fuels and our dependence on them?
I absolutely support objectives of phasing out the emissions from the use of fossil fuels and to find ways of meeting environmental requirements while also making energy cheap and abundant to those who need it, because that's the basis for most economic well-being.
What would you say then to people who argue that, digging more natural gas out of Alaska is not the best thing for the environment of Alaska, but also for the rest of the world?
Well, in fact, a lot of work has been done that's demonstrated that the global emissions impact of using natural gas from Alaska, and particularly from the North Slope, will be to reduce the carbon and greenhouse gas emissions that otherwise would have occurred. And in fact, with the 45Q tax credits and re-injection of carbon dioxide into the empty pore space in the Cook Inlet in southern Alaska, in fact, it's highly likely that this will be an even lower carbon impact than it would have been with just an LNG export project.
Well, and we're looking at pictures now of some gas extraction. The environment looks pretty pristine. Let's be frank about this. The extraction does not. Again, what would you say to those environmentalists in Alaska who are concerned about the damage it may well do there?
Well, I think all the companies operating on the North Slope of Alaska operate to very high environmental standards and regulations to protect the environment. The picture you just saw there was, in fact, of a drilling rig that we had right next door to the main haul road. So the footprint is minimized by being as close to existing infrastructure as possible and limiting the amount of surface area that's required. Our own objective is to be carbon neutral in terms of our development by re-injecting carbon dioxide emissions on the site back into reservoirs from 2030 and beyond. But also Alaska has done a lot of work to create the regulatory environment to allow re-injection of carbon dioxide into empty pore space to limit the emissions of oil and gas production in the state at large.
And David, what's your message then to those leaders and indeed environmentalists gathering in Baku? Is it that essentially, trying to change things globally is only ever going to work in a measured way, in a proportional way, and that things like natural gas have to be part of that? Is that the sales pitch that you would like to get across?
Look, I think it's a very complicated problem to deal with, and there are no silver bullets or any instant solutions. That energy poverty is as much as a problem as any other kind of poverty, and therefore a measured approach. And honestly, the engagement of the oil and natural gas industry that began in the UAE in the last COP and will doubtless continue through this COP. As I say, we're happy to be part of ensuring that there is energy availability for those people who need it at the lowest possible cost. In this instance, in a way that benefits consumers, but also the population of the state of Alaska, and working closely with the government.
Okay. David, can I just because we've got very tight on time, just very, very, very quickly, are you then happy that President Trump is returning to the White House?
In fact, it doesn't make a lot of difference because the support for this project was bipartisan. Some of the enabling legislation happened during the Biden administration. Some of the initial progress happened under the previous Trump administration. What we can be sure of is that the support of the US government for what we're doing. It doesn't rely upon any individual, but of course it didn't do any harm to hear the President-elect's comments supporting what is a very major infrastructure project that will provide some of the lowest carbon footprint energy to Asia.
OK, David Hobbs, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, let's speak to Zoisha Northbond. She's the Chief Executive of Octopus Energy Generation and joins us now. And you're looking at massive investments in wind farms, some $2 billion. Just first of all, explain to us where that money, where that investment is going to be spent.
Yeah, so today at COP, we announced that we've already invested £2 billion into the offshore wind industry over the last 2 years. We've actually put that into projects that are in the UK, Germany and the Netherlands, but then also development projects and innovation that's going to help further drive down the cost of offshore wind. So Osage, for instance, which is a big tech disruptor, which deals in lighter foundations and the ability to build offshore wind farms more quickly. But then developments, for instance, off the coast of Norway and also South Korea. So we've invested expansively globally in the world's offshore wind programme.
But I assume that even with this investment, you, Octopus Energy, accept, that clearly fossil fuels, natural gas, are also part of the future.
I think for us, we really believe that we've got to start electrifying society as quickly as possible. We have all the answers where we can create a clean energy system. So not only renewables, but we look at being able to mobilise customers in their own homes with amazing things like batteries, solar on roofs, cars on driveways. So we're really in a world where we should be using renewables as the prime source of energy, and fossil fuels, when absolutely needed, we should be weaning ourselves off of those now.
In saying that, there'll be a lot of people, we're sat in the UK today, we've got a lot of offshore wind, but frankly, the last couple of weeks, there's been no wind at all. And that's a big concern, isn't it? People who may not be plugged into the technology of this sector, who think that, this is all very well and good, when the sun's out, when the wind's blowing, but not necessarily when that doesn't happen. What would you say to them?
Well, you have the amazing relationship between wind and solar. And actually, into the future, when you don't have it, we'll have battery storage. We'll have these amazing things on driveways like EVs that should also be able to, into the future, store and transport electrons back onto the grid. And as I said, right now, we need to be weaning ourselves off of those main sources, and they should be very much secondary when we look at our energy mix.
OK, Zoisha Northbond there from Octopus. Thank you very much indeed. Live for us in Baku, where that COP summit is taking place. Thank you for joining us. OK, let's bring you some of the rest of today's business stories now. And the insurance group Direct Line is to axe around 550 jobs as part of a cost-cutting aimed at saving £50 million in 2025. It says it wants a leaner and more efficient operating model. A trading update shows the group lost yet more motor insurance customers in the third quarter, with policyholders for its own brands down around 11% to 3.05 million. NatWest has edged another step closer to full privatisation after buying back £1 billion worth of its shares from the government. The government's stake in the bank, which it bailed out, of course, back in 2008, is now down from 14.81% to 11.4% at the end of October. But that's way down from 38%. That's what it stood in December of last year. And the price of Bitcoin has risen above $80,000 for the first time ever. After Donald Trump's victory in the US election, the value of the world's biggest cryptocurrency has now increased by more than 80% so far this year. During his campaign, the president-elect's pledged to make America the crypto capital of the planet. And don't forget, you can get more on that and indeed the rest of today's business stories. Just log on to our Money blog by scanning the QR code that's on your screen right now. Now, today is Armistice Day, when nations come together to remember those men and women who've died in conflict. But is enough being done to help military veterans re-enter the workplace? and have a work-life balance? And are companies missing out on people with crucial skills by overlooking military veterans? Well, earlier, I spoke to Dan Goldenberg. He's a retired US Navy captain and president of Call of Duty Endowment, which helps fund organisations to get unemployed US veterans back to work. And Louis Tinsley, who is a former ex-Special Forces here in the UK and co-founder of the high-performance clothing brand ThruDoc, which is one of the UK's fastest-growing businesses. And I started by asking Dan exactly how he is helping veterans in the United States.
Well, thanks for having me on this very important day, Darren. I really appreciate it. The Call of Duty Endowment, which is celebrating its 15th year, is focused on entirely placing veterans into high-quality, high-paying jobs. And we do this by funding the most efficient and effective organizations that get unemployed and underemployed ex-forces back to work. We also raise awareness about issues that veterans face when seeking employment, and we help employers understand the value veterans bring to their organizations. And very importantly, veterans are 3 times more likely to land a meaningful job if they obtain professional help with CV writing and interview skills. And they should never, ever pay for these services, as we provide them free through our grantees.
So why the name then, Call of Duty? What's the connection there?
Yeah, so we were founded by Activision Blizzard in a way to give back to those who inspired the game Call of Duty, which was arguably the company's largest game. And, you know, to this day, the company's donated more than 56 million, or about 43 million pounds to the endowment. And that has contributed to other donations, which in turn have allowed us to place 140,000 veterans into high quality jobs.
Louis, let's come to you here in the UK. We just talked about the troubles that US veterans go through, and that is something we see here in the UK too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I guess as a former veteran myself, I'm really humbled to be able to work with the Call of Duty Endowment and getting charity to get veterans back to work, really.
So tell us about your story. You used to be in the SAS, and now you started I'm told, one of the fastest growing businesses here in Britain.
Yeah, so SBS actually, so Special Boat Service. But yeah, I now I co-founded a company called ThruDoc, which is a high performance outerwear company.
And what is ThruDoc? Talk us through. Sell your wares if you like. Talk us through what it is.
Yeah, so ThruDoc have created quite an inspirational, aspirational clothing brand. So it's more than just the clothing that you wear. It's kind of being part of a community. So yeah, we basically made a range of technical outerwear that's suitable for any kind of climate.
And what's the connection here? Because there is a connection, isn't there, to Call of Duty, which, you know, I'm sure most people know about at home. If they don't, you know, it's one of the largest video games in the world with millions of users. Just talk to me what you've been doing with them, what the connection is, if you like.
Yeah, so it's really important to kind of be able to consult on the in-game character, basically. So the Endeavour Tracer Pack, which is a purchase you can make through the game. The guy in the game is a Special Boat Service guy, so it was our job to consult and to make sure that the character was dressed accurately. So he's actually, interestingly enough, wearing ThruDoc clothing in the game.
And it's really interesting, this, isn't it, Dan, how these kind of 3 things can come together, you know, the help for veterans, the ability to actually boost a business, if you like, but also working with something that, you know, lots of, particularly, I think it's fair to say, young men are engaged with, which is, you know, incredible video games like Call of Duty.
Yeah, no, it's been an incredible partnership. And, you know, our partnership with ThruDoc brings to bear not just realism, but authenticity of the military community by Louis and his firm's involvement on partnering with us to this in-game pack. And, you know, it's actually the most successful Call of Duty Endowment pack we've ever launched. And it's going to result in thousands of veterans getting jobs.
And Louis, how do you engage more veterans? How do you exploit, you know, the skills and the experience that they have had, sometimes over decades of service?
I think the pack and kind of the reach and engagement that we've got from this is going a long way to do so. And yeah, so, I mean, by buying the pack and a gift with purchase through our website, because obviously you can buy the merchandise, which we've created, the T-shirts and hoodies, So that's going to go a long way as well.
And Dan, just in terms of the engagement, you know, it's clearly, as you say, been extraordinarily high. Where do you think this goes next? Where would you like to take it next, if you like, this relationship?
Yeah, well, the need for veterans to get help and really ask for help. I think it's hard for ex-forces to do that. And generally, culturally, I'm a Navy veteran myself. You know, the PAC is wonderful for its authenticity, but also it's the awareness it creates amongst the military community and their friends and family to remind them, go ask for help. Get a little bit of help and go a long way to getting a great job. And this partnership has just been definitely a 1 + 1 = 3 effort, and we're thrilled to work with TrueDark on it.
There you go. That was Louis Tinsel and Dan Goldenberg speaking to me a little earlier. You're watching Business Live on Sky News. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to be taking you through the markets. As you can see, the FTSE up a little today. We'll have all the details in just a couple of minutes.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. Alex Crawford joining us now from Ukraine.
Their personal possessions are all scattered around the place.
Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, try and make sense of the big numbers for us.
Things can change incredibly quickly, and that's what they have done.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
In politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. You know, it takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, like, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel like just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it. This is brilliant.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world, the likes of Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Sir Elton John. We try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Let's have a look at the markets this afternoon. I'm going to begin in the United States, where they've continued to surf the wave, the Trump wave, if you like, though the S&P 500 is on a course for its highest ever close north of 6,000. The Nasdaq down just the tiniest of fractions this afternoon. In Europe, stocks also trading higher, starting the week on a positive note. As you can see, they're blue across the board. What Donald Trump's presidency could mean for the European markets. The pan-European stocks 600 index is currently hovering at around the 1% mark, as the market assesses the likelihood of universal tariffs from President-elect Trump. Here in London, the FTSE 100 also up a little today, 0.65%, with Croda International continuing to lead the pack after a sales performance update showing that sales were up 5% prior to the previous year. Rolls-Royce also continuing to rally following demand, it seems, for small nuclear reactors. On the foreign markets, in terms of the currencies, the pound is down against the dollar. The dollar's, of course, strengthened since the election last week in the United States, but it is up against the euro. The euro's really weakened in the last couple of days, the pound at 1.21. And finally, let's look at the price of oil. As you can see, it is down again, down to just under $72 a barrel for Brent crude. Let's bring in Amanda McDonald, investment manager at Aubrey Capital Management. Very good afternoon to you, Amanda. Let's start, if we can, with Burberry. It shares down again this afternoon. Big question is why?
Yes, the Burberry shares are down. We have seen some expected bid that was rumoured by Moncler seems to not be happening. And together with that and poor trading, the shares have suffered quite in common with lots of other luxury brands, actually, which have also fallen over the last year.